Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Be Unbound podcast. You have today your two gentlemen of choice for the podcast. It is David Rethemeyer, and I'm joined by Abe Chen. How we doing, Abe?
What's up, guys? Doing very well. Yeah. I'm excited to talk about what we're talking about today, so let's get to it.
Yes. So today's topic is an interesting one. Hopefully all of the topics we talk about are interesting, but in this case, we're talking about one that typically we don't like to necessarily, unless it has a happy ending, and that is when things go wrong. And if your life is anything like the life of, humans, things go wrong a lot. That's just the reality of humanity, is that things go wrong. We live in a broken world. We're broken. Everything's broken for the most part. So things happen and things don't go the way that we expect them to. So that's what we'll be talking about today.
I love how you just implied that there are like non-human listeners, which could be fun, but
I mean, we don't know. I mean, hey, people could be listening to this with their dog. Maybe we could go with that.
Sure. I mean, hey, if anything out there listens and they find the Be Unbound podcast, but that's a different podcast discussion.
That's a different one entirely. We don't need to go there today.
Yep, but no, it's so true, man. We were just talking before we hit record where David and we just for our jobs. If you're an Unbound student, some of you guys know me as the guy who makes people look good, which means I work with video a lot. And man, we were talking about how just you do video work and marketing, I do video work, and so much of what we do is dependent on our equipment working. And that just kind of leads right back into how with doing school online and even just being online students, Unbound students really, where a lot of our community is online, a lot of what we do, and just honestly, so much is dependent on technology. So much depends on if things work. Pros and cons to that, and that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh.
So what has been? I don't know, man. I'll just straight up say this week has been an interesting one where technology again hasn't exactly worked. I'll link that meme you showed me in the show notes. That was so funny, especially just for me as a video person. And if you ever work with Adobe, I feel like you would understand. Just Michael will flash it on screen right now. But the more I look at it, the funnier it gets, where it literally just says Photoshop is what is it? Oh, this is cool. This is just pretty fun. And everything else is just killed me. And yeah, man, it's so true because I don't know.
For some reason, maybe it's just because Adobe is just so well featured and is the industry standard for a lot of these programs. But it feels like it should have way less optimization issues than it does.
It
feels like it should way less things should crash and get corrupted than it does.
Exactly. And so the amount of times, if you've worked with Unbound and media stuff, the stories of to be great, it wasn't all Adobe, but just things go wrong. And again, going back to the whole student thing, things don't always work as they should, especially with school. And I'm not saying that if you go to traditional college or as we Unbounders would say, box school, things are necessarily easier, but there's so many different ways that we do depend on things, and I think dealing with that is something that is just very interesting. So man, what do you think?
Well, yeah, you touched on there's a word that you said there is that we're dependent on them, and
Okay. Yeah.
that's an interesting one that even like just in American culture particularly is that we very much stress independence. Is that we're able to do whatever
Mm-hmm.
we want without being dependent on others. That's something that American culture stresses a lot, and
Sure.
the thing is that we
Mm-hmm.
very
Mm-hmm.
rarely actually think about how dependent we are on so many things. Just like for
Yeah.
one example is that like when you're driving down the road, the whole reason that we're able to travel, between different states is that we are dependent on everyone knowing and understanding the rules of the road, even though it seems like
Yep.
50% of the time they don't, but that's another tangent.
Yeah. Mhm.
And we're dependent on the fact that, civil engineers have designed all of the traffic structures to work in a certain way. We're dependent on so many systems to work for us to be able to do the things that we're wanting to do. And
Yeah.
when those things
Mm-hmm.
work, I think we're spoiled a lot of the time by how incredibly well a lot of things in our lives do work. But so that when
Yep.
the
Mm-hmm.
occasion happens that it doesn't work, that, will end up being, it feels like everything's just going wrong and everything's breaking and the world is falling apart. So that's an
Right.
interesting
Mm-hmm.
point is dependence.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, you could almost go like really philosophical and deep into like Thomas Hobbes, like social construct, or I mean,
Mm.
social contract theory, and like how we all
Oh
have
boy.
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a very interesting way to look at things. But I also think, hey, that's what we do for your philosophy class and your psychology class and all that or whatever.
Uh,
Down to earth stuff, man. What have been ways for you to, um, I guess you could say, I don't want to say not depend on things, but like the reality is we do,
there you do.
especially especially with school. Let's start with this. What was a time when you really had to face, just things not working well? One of those days, Um,
Oh, dude, now you're making me pick one is the problem.
oh, yep.
Because
This is just David and I basically helping each other, having like a therapy session. Just
for real. And here's the big one is that if you've known and talked to me for any extended period of time, you will know that I have a very shall we say love-hate but mostly hate relationship with my internet service provider. Because I live in a very rural area where
Yep.
we really don't have a whole lot of options. And honestly, as much as I hate to admit it, the service that we do get is pretty amazing for where we're at. But it doesn't stop me from being the fact that I did schooling and now I work in an online environment. And so a lot of what I do is very, very dependent on having a stable, speedy internet connection. And that doesn't happen a lot of the time. And there have been many days where my mother just would listen upstairs as I'm just pacing back and forth down the hall, just going, why is it not working? I just need to upload this thing. And yes, I have been very frustrated with my internet service provider, who shall not be named, because if I did start naming them and describing how I feel about them further, I would get in trouble. So
We'll never get sponsored or whatever. So yeah, keep a cap.
Oh, let me put it to you this way. When I play online games with my friends in the evenings, we'll have groups, and for one of the group chats that we use most often is that I have named it Screw CenturyLink is the name of the group chat. That's just the name of it. Because it's gotten to the point where me and my friends who play team games together have gotten so frustrated with CenturyLink for having me drop connection or not be able to do things that is just the anthem of our group is screw CenturyLink, man. Why can't I do things?
Yep, you're that one laggy friend who has bad ping. I am so sorry because that's a lot of times myself. I get it, man. For 2.5 years, I worked as a dorm parent at a high school, and this was an interesting situation where there were international kids who came from overseas to New York, to the States to study. We had a dormitory where they all stayed, and for one of the years, straight up, for all the years I was there, the internet sucked, straight up. And it wasn't even just like bad connection. When I first got there, the system wasn't properly set up so that there were literally 5 or 6 different Wi-Fis throughout the hall.
Oh no.
So you would have to like sign into something different if you moved down the hall. Yeah. And so thankfully they decided to switch it, the year after I was there, having to deal with all the kids screaming about their internet crashing all the time because, again, overload, right? So they finally did install this like central system. But honestly, the problem was it still sucked for whatever reason. It would literally never work. And I think part of it is because it might be just like a home network and it's not supposed to support, 20, 30 high school kids who are all gaming.
Yeah, you need an enterprise set up for that.
Exactly. And so just being a dorm parent, again, the keyword is parent here, where you just, at the time, obviously, I was also finishing up classes and doing school. And so... And, doing video work, having to upload stuff and all that.
So I bet you had like a bunch of like priority battles where there was people trying to vie for saying, this thing that I'm doing is the most important thing. No, I'm doing it most important. It's kind of like everybody at a party, like huddling around the one phone charger. Just like, I'm at 5%, but I'm at 2%. Okay, I'm at 8%, but I have a call in like 5 minutes,
Mm-hmm. And there was that too. But so, as a RA, my apartment was like down the hall towards the guys' hall. And you could just tell I'm there doing my thing. And then down the hall, I hear a chorus of, and that I knew that meant some game had crashed, internet was out, and back on duty. And so that was such an experience. I mean, like, again, it sounds so bad to say like, yeah, we're so dependent on the internet working well, but it's so true. And honestly, like I said, this is something I feel like as Unbounders or just online students in general, 2020 has showed us how much, how important it is. And like, it's just another aspect that people don't talk about a whole lot, which is like, yeah, you get the freedom to do stuff. You get the freedom to go out there and explore and do cool things. But yeah, a lot of it is dependent on internet.
Yeah.
And that is just, it's one of the struggles, man. It's one of the struggles.
It is, yeah. In this case, it's, class isn't canceled because there's building renovations. Class is canceled because, Canvas is doing an infrastructure update. That's our building maintenance.
Did you ever have, like, late assignments because Canvas got shut down and all that? Or just any other?
Not necessarily Canvas, but I definitely had a couple because of just my internet. Where
really?
Man. Oh yeah. I had a couple of those.
I had for sure. Yep, same. Well, it wasn't really like Canvas or Blackboard or anything, but it was more just internet. I would submit, it would go up to like 98%, and the internet would
just get stuck. Well, or you would
I have to
sometimes,
start over again.
or sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this where it gets up to 99% and then it just stays there. And you're just like,
Yeah, right.
what do I do? Did it fail? Is it processing? What do I do? And you just have no idea whether or not it's done and it just isn't showing yet, or because if you close out, you might have to redo the whole thing. You don't know. You don't know. It's
Yeah, you don't want to touch it. You just like leave it overnight and pray.
and it's just
It
the worst
actually
thing when you
works.
come back first thing in the morning and it's still at 99%.
It's still there. Oh my goodness, I know that feeling. Yep.
Or occasionally, what
so-
I would have to do for important assignments is like go to a friend's house or like the local library to upload really
Go to a coffee
important
shop.
stuff.
Yeah. I will say, man, this is something I do miss after 2020 because, like, depending on where you are, like, it depends on if coffee shops are really open and all that. Like, you know, where in the world you are. But yeah, that was such a thing of like, I have an assignment, like rushing to a coffee shop and just like trying to, or like, yeah, like having, it was either that or like having to like, you know, upload a video, but mostly like submitting big assignments. And if my like, you know, I had a coffee shop close to my house, I just like rushing over, like, all right. So, yeah. But you touched on what do I do, and I kind of want to talk about that a little bit, man. Of yeah, so there's obviously like the technical side of things, but
turn it off and turn it back on again. Always do that first. Yep. Just get that out of the way right now. That applies to just so many things, especially with technology.
So many things.
Turn it off, turn it back on again. See if it works.
Exactly. And complete random tangent. I mean, we're just saying it works for so many things. I saw a meme where it was just like I forget, it was like a meme about like some couple asking for relationship advice or some boy asking for relationship advice. And it was like someone saying, have you turned it off and turned it on again? Have you put it in rice?
I wouldn't necessarily recommend putting your significant other in rice. I don't know about that one.
That is another conversation for another podcast. We have so many lined up, bro. This is gonna be great. Yeah, like I think dealing with it is a whole thing in itself, really, where obviously just we learn patience, right?
Yes.
That is very much a thing. But what have been ways that have helped you kind of keep moving, even as like things don't work, especially with our school careers or even our careers right now? It's just a world where things constantly don't go right.
Don't work. Yeah. Well, there's a couple angles that you can take with that. Is that sometimes like the system itself that's completely outside of you won't work, and you can there's a certain point where you have to recognize that spending more time trying to fix the thing isn't worthwhile, or sometimes you just can't do anything about it, and that can be really really frustrating. And sometimes you just have to take a step back from it and just leave that for a second, because there's nothing that you can do about it. And I know my tendency is, as soon as you do that, is it's time to procrastinate and try to figure out all of the things that you could have done to maybe avoid this obstacle, or how do I get around this in the future. But even then, it's typically not gonna help you very much. So like I definitely several times when the internet was not working, it was just, guess I might as well just like clean my room, or like just organize stuff or something, just find something else productive that you can do with your time, is just a really
100%.
simple one to do.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And hey, I'm just going to go straight in with sometimes procrastination is interesting. I know on this podcast, we've talked about how procrastination, depending on how you do it, can be a positive thing if you really need to put something aside. And the whole putting something aside thing, in Unbound, we talk a lot about being intentional and being all in, and 100% yes, we are. But the reality of life is also a lot of times we are intentional because it's forced on us, right? Yeah. And so if something's not working, it doesn't mean that we stop being intentional, if you will. It means being intentional in those times of maybe this is, like we kind of have to procrastinate, but how can we do that in a productive way? And hey, honestly, my family kind of calls me out on this a lot, where I'm a video editor, as a lot of you guys listening know, and my Premiere sometimes just doesn't want to work. My computer just doesn't want to work, and sometimes those times, thankfully, YouTube works. So I'll just switch over and watch YouTube for a little bit, and like, even in a mental way, like try to calm myself down. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna learn about something else now. And my my brothers are always like, I thought you were editing. I'm like, hey, look, things happen. Okay, I need a break, man. Give me a break. Right? Anyway,
that's that touches on something that my dad actually taught me a long time ago from his many years of experience in IT, was that sometimes, like, technical glitches are a good opportunity to take a step back and try to get a different look at the problem. He said that one of his favorite things to do was that he was a software developer, and so when he was pushing updates, he would take a walk to the other side of his workplace to some of the guys who were in like the hardware department, and just sit and talk with them as they were working about whatever it was that he was working on. And half the time they didn't even know what he was talking about, but they were just able to kind of listen and sometimes ask questions, and just talking through that gave them a different perspective on that. And so that's an interesting point, that sometimes things don't work because of the systems, but other times things don't work because it's a limitation of our minds, is that sometimes we don't have the capacity to think through things. And so maybe, like, for example, with your family in those times, it's an opportunity to sit and like work through the process for a second.
Yeah, no. And I mean, speaking of family or even people, I love that, where it is an opportunity to, again, do something different. A lot of times, especially as online students, let's face it, you've been sitting in front of your computer for a while, and then you're just cramming, and then it doesn't work, and you're like, We've all been there. But it is a good reminder to stand up and maybe talk to people around you, your roommate or family or whatever. Get some human connection. And I just think it's so interesting. This is another deep tangent we could go into, but the idea that we need rest. I know our own Jonathan Brush has taught us a lot about the importance of not fearing failure and accepting things and knowing that, hey, sometimes it's time to rest. And like you said, man, get a new perspective. And so I almost think that in our fallen world, but with those of us who are Christians, we serve a sovereign God, and he allows these issues to crop up so that we can, forcibly disconnect us and give us a different perspective or help us to rest or whatever. And
whether or not things are broken from our perspective, God's still good. That's always a comforting thought.
Amen. Exactly. That is huge. I mean, and it's funny because, hey, just being very real, we have that perspective of we go to God for if something's bad, or whatever. But Scripture says all things, bring all things to Him, right? Making sure that we are like doing all things for His glory, whether we eat or drink, right? And so I think that's a really cool point of, especially those times when things go wrong. Again, it's such. I think what annoys me personally is that when things go wrong, they're usually small things. So it's a kind of like, come on, man, like this is not working. Like, what the heck, you know?
Yeah.
And so it's like it's a small thing, and it's just the little things that happen that build up, right? And then you lose time, and then that's frustrating, and that gets you in the whole attitude and whatever. Because again, it's the little things, and I'm like, why? You know, this should not go wrong. It's just a reminder again, like in a very big picture sense, how we need to depend on God. But I love how you're, helping us to grow.
Yeah, that is. And sort of the question that I have off of that is that, so you know, that's it's really, really helpful to keep that perspective, but that's way easier said than done is the thing. Is that you know, we can have, you know, think, oh yes, you know, I should be dependent on God, and I should keep in mind that He's sovereign over all things. All right, let me go start working on this. Why is Google Docs down? You know, so on a more practical level, I'm curious as to do you have any ways that you try to keep that perspective in mind when it's so easy to forget?
Oh yeah, that's such a great point. I think one very practical thing is like, bad attitude is a thing, man. Just having a bad day is such a thing, and finding ways to calm down. Just straight up, for me, sometimes I just need to stop and like literally like take a 10-second quiet time or nap or something, and just like breathe.
Take a 10-second nap? That's wow. I mean, that's impressive.
I'm sorry.
It's just like talk about a power nap. Wow.
10 minutes. There we go.
Okay. I was just say 10-second nap. I feel like when the pastor goes long on Sunday, I do those occasionally. I just not in and out of 10-second naps. Yes.
Okay, so 10 minutes.
You're saying you need to take like 10 seconds and quiet down. Yeah.
Well, I mean, sometimes it takes 10 seconds, man. Besides that, you know, practically speaking as well, I just sometimes turn up the tunes, listen to some music. As a believer, hey, scripture memory is a thing, man. It's really is such a thing. And I want to make it very clear here that I'm not just saying, like, this is not a sounding spiritual thing. It's like, oh, you know, I memorize scripture, and it's like, you know, it's a thing, like, where by God's grace, you know, with His Holy Spirit, if you have scripture in you, you know, it really does help of just like, all right, chill, man. Like, just take a couple minutes, breathe. I go play some like EDM or whatever. So I'm like,
let me calm down by pumping up the bass line. Yes,
exactly. You know, sometimes it's just chilling, and you need some happy music. So I just blast some good EDM. We both listen. I feel like we both appreciate the same kind of music, man. So we both get it.
I completely understand. I say that as a joke, but also as somebody who does that very regularly.
Exactly. And so it's like, I mean, I think it's hilarious how I do genuinely love EDM, and it's such a fun, creative genre. But sometimes it's also because you just need some good, happy, hype music, man. Yeah. It's like, you know, so there's that. What about you, man? Like, just, something goes wrong. What's something that you go to that really helps you?
Yeah. Something that's super, super simple, super practical that you mentioned there is quite literally breathing. And this is something that I thought for a long time that I'd heard and just seen, on like motivational, like little things on Facebook is like, just breathe. Like, what does that even mean? I'm already breathing, But seriously, taking a second and just trying to stop everything else that you are doing and only just focusing on like the most essential thing for living, which is breathing, and just doing that for a few seconds. There's some like psychological and biological evidence for this working, but that actually can really help to settle down your mind and put you in a more like set state. So that's something that I've been trying to do more often, and I probably should do more often. But the other thing is that I keep a to-do list on my phone, as a lot of us do, and my top task is always just like something that I need to remember that will help me, that I think is like really helpful in whatever season that I'm in. So like, for example, right now is I'm trying to get better at kind of what we're talking about right now, which is going back to God first. And so right now I have written down, pray first, everything else can and should wait. Is the reminder that I have that whenever I look at my to-do list, which is where I tend to go when I procrastinate, is that I can see that on the top of it. And that has been a helpful reminder for me.
That is huge. Yeah, man. I think it's just, it is cool to think how, we can go to God and pray, and the fact that it's not some crazy deep thing. It's a very practical, like, we depend on him and we need it.
It's a conversation. It's a relationship. Yeah.
It is. And it's so real of, again, just literally, hey, for me personally, yesterday, it was not a great day. Things were not working. And even just knowing of like, all right, I know I'm in a bad, like, this is, all these little things are not working. I'm losing time. I would just add to what you said, another thing of, this is different for everyone, but creating space for yourself to have mistakes and whatnot. I think that is actually more important than a lot of people realize, just to not cram yourself so hard that everything has to work perfectly, being realistic and giving yourself a little room to grow and to maneuver. Because I know for my personality, I tend to do that, where everything is timed to a T, and it's this intricate system of like, everything has to work. I'm gambling for this to work. Hey, Murphy's Law. You know this well if you work in the video industry. If something can go wrong, it usually will. And that's been a lesson for me for sure of like, it's okay if things don't go well. It's a learning opportunity. And, just being intentional about learning during those times is so big.
Yeah, just kind of going back to the way we started is that things are broken and things are gonna be broken, and it's just how well we can deal with things eventually breaking and our response to that. It's the adage of, things might be bad right now, but that doesn't mean that my response has to be. I can't control things right now, but I can control my response to things potentially.
100%. I will say, all this being said, I am grateful that this has been working well. Obviously now, just because we are in two different parts of the country, we've had to use the internet. It is storming. I don't know if you guys can hear on my end, but there's definitely thunder and everything going on. And my internet doesn't always respond well to thunderstorms. So I am surprised I'm still here. I am grateful. This has been fun, man. I'm glad we talked about this. A lot of good reminders.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been a lot of fun, and for you guys who are listening, thank you for listening so much. And if we've mentioned a couple times as our experience as Unbound students, and we are part of the Ascend program. And so, if you're wondering what it can be like to be part of a program that absolutely makes room for you to have things break and to fail at projects, but also to succeed at projects along with a group of other like-minded students, then we are going to have links down below to all of that good stuff.
Yeah, and hey, well, if you have any other thoughts about how you've dealt with things going wrong, we would love to hear from you. You can contact or find us on all the social medias, Facebook, Instagram. We are on YouTube. If you are a student, you might even find David and I on the Unbound forums. And look forward to hearing from you guys if you have any stories or questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, thanks for listening, and we will see you all next time.